You can tell them.
We say, we're welcome. We are, Luces, Stafu. We say, we're welcome.
Hello, everybody.
We're welcome.
Take a towel, Uncle Paul.
We are, Luces, Stafu. We say.
My dear friends, our dear hunter brothers, we again in the place of all our dreams in Africa, and I'm together today here with our doyen of the safari world, our greatest gun expert Paul Roberts, and my PH on this safari, Daniel Mosley. Welcome to our discussion. Today we're going to continue discussion we had started with Paul a year ago about ultimate rifles for African safaris and what he thinks about them. Paul, it's always great pleasure to see you happy, but I haven't been seeing you so happy. I saw you today landing in Katima. Are you happy to be back to Africa?
I'm very happy to be here. This is real Africa. This is an elephant hunt, which, as you know, I've spent a lot of my life elephant hunting. You're going to do the shooting, but I'm going to enjoy it just as much as you are, seeing if my nephew can actually get his act together on a good tusker. So I'm very pleased to be here. And it's a long haul from West Sussex to here, but here we are.
Yeah, we're glad you're here, Paul, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy it. Daniel, it's a great pleasure to meet you again. We first met in London and we were discussing the plans about this safari. Now we're here. What are your feelings? What do you feel about this safari?
Firstly, I'd just like to say that I feel very lucky to be with both of you here at this point in time, at this place in the world. Both yourself and Paul Roberts, one of the living legends of this industry and the firearms manufacturing or gunsmith industry. I'm certainly looking forward to this hunt. Elephant hunt is very exciting. It's Africa's largest land mammal and a very clever animal, so I'm definitely looking forward to the challenge, getting right into it, and looking forward to the hunt.
Paul, a year ago we were discussing with you what is the ultimate safari battery and which rifles one should take with him in Africa. And our friends can refer to our previous video where Paul in detail gave information about what rifles you could use. Today we have three rifles in two calibers. We have a 416 bolt action rifle and we have two box locks 470.
First of all, I'd like to say, Al, you've got the perfect elephant battery. You're only hunting buffalo and elephant, so we've excluded small bores because it's not necessary. And you've got the two rifles that I would recommend for buffalo and elephant hunting. If we're talking about fairly open terrain, you've got a 416 with a scope. And if you're close in the bush on an elephant, you can't beat a double barrel rifle and give it the double tap, which you can't possibly do quick enough with the bolt rifle. So you've got the perfect battery for what we're doing, which is elephant hunting basically. What I would say is that the 470 caliber has become the most popular for what you're doing because the availability of ammunition, sometimes ammunition gets lost in transit, and 470 is now the standard and very easily available throughout the world. And it has become really the standard caliber for big bore double barrel rifles. So you've got a great battery. You couldn't do better.
Both 470 double rifles here, they are from two different eras. They're the same calibers, but they're from 2 centuries. I think you, as a person who been following the evolution of the gun making in Europe and in America, Can you tell what is different and what is common between these two rifles?
What we've got here is a century apart, but the same product. The two rifles are almost identical in format, and they were made 100 years apart, which shows that the formula of a double-barreled heavy caliber rifle is still paramount in Africa for the type of hunting you're doing. The first rifle, the Lang, which was made in 1920, is a box lock ejector, which for a working gun, very high quality, but at the same time, very much a utilitarian rifle. Now, it took me a long time to be able to replicate that in modern manufacturing, and with the help of modern machinery, we've been able to produce a very close facsimile of that rifle 100 years later at a price which is affordable by PHs like Dan, who obviously want them as working tools, not to stick in the cabinet to look at. And I think we've produced a product that when you look at them, they're very similar and they do the same job. So I'm very pleased with the result of what's happened over 100 years. It proves the validity of what the old boys used is still current today.
Paul, we many times discussed this. I always ask you why you recommend for people to bring unique custom-made rifles to Africa, and what is your opinion about why or should we bring top quality rifles to Africa to hunt, and or we should use plastic stock machined modern guns?
The reason I like seeing quality rifles on safari, Al, is because safari hunting today has become more, not only a hunt, it's a pageant as well. It's a reincarnation of something that has gone on for a long time, and I just feel that to give these animals the reverence and the importance, to shoot them with plastic stocked cheapo rifles seems a shame when you think of the costs and the time that the team have put in to produce the hunter to a position where he can shoot that animal, and then he shoots it with a Woolworths gun. You know, it just grates with me. I don't think you have to have them covered in gold or anything, but these are the typical sort of guns that I think look good in the hands of a person who's hunting a noble animal like a buffalo, a lion or an elephant. And I just think the animals deserve the importance of a good firearm, a good quality firearm, where the quality is obvious in any photograph or film. That's what I think. That's my opinion. I'm sure Mr. Weatherby and one or two others wouldn't agree with me, but there you go. Well, some of the Weatherby rifles are very nice too.
Dan, as Paul mentioned, availability of the versatile ammunition and these rifles becoming standard was for me main reason why I choose the 470. You being professional hunter whose life and the life of whose client sometimes depends on the performance of the firearm of the pit, why you have chosen this caliber? Why 470?
I chose the 470 for a number of reasons. One of those being the significant energy and stopping power that it has, together with penetration. The fact that you've got a second round if you need it, and mainly because in my profession and being in close proximity to dangerous game and being in charge of taking care of a client's life, I want something as a backup gun or as a stopping gun that can deal with a situation should I have a charge from an animal like a buffalo or even an elephant. So having something that has enough energy, first of all, in a very pointable, fast-moving platform, and also having the ability to take that second shot, which it can happen in very quick situations where your first shot isn't perfect. Certainly in the case of a charging elephant, for example, or even a buffalo, if you don't hit it right, you aren't going to stop it. So first of all, having enough energy behind it and the penetration, but also having that chance for a second shot. I basically, just as my duty to protect the people I'm with, and also as a follow-up gun when dealing with wounded animals and stuff like that, having a fast, effective rifle that I can use at close quarters, which is often, that's where the cases are most dangerous. And it's a fantastic cartridge. You've got a 500 grain bullet depending on the ammunition, significant foot-pounds, significant penetration, and in a relatively light recoil. It's got significant recoil, but not too much. Something you can practice with, get good at, good pointability, and it's just an effective cartridge with the option of a second shot if needed in fast succession.
Paul, I want to talk a little bit in detail about each firearm we have here. I want to start with 416 Rigby by Wesley Richards. I'm personally, as the user, as a hunter, happy with this rifle so much. I was discussing yesterday with my PH, having hand machine and regulated feeding mechanism of the between the bolt and the magazine on this rifle is done so to absolute level, so when you're shooting you don't even feel you're shooting not straight pull rifle. Feeding is so perfect, bullet after bullet, both it retrieves the cartridge and feeds the new cartridge into the barrel. I'm very much enjoyed with this rifle. With this rifle it's my third safari in Africa, and I love it, and it's really practical tool, and it's very effective on buffalo and on leopards and on lion. And a little bit more details about the make, rifle, and engineering part of it.
Well, Al, I'd like to talk to you a bit about this rifle. I hope you appreciate how important this rifle is. It's one of the finest rifles Wesley Richards have ever made, and it was made during the period when my dear friend Simon Claude was running the company, and he and I always collaborated on gun making together, although we were, we might say, in opposition to each other, both being rifle makers. We always discussed and worked together and shared our findings and sometimes discussed our differences of opinion. But this is one of the last rifles that was made during Simon's running of Wesley Richards. He unfortunately died a couple of years ago, and I doubt if rifles any better than this will ever be made again by Wesley Richards. It has the Mauser Magnum action, the long stroke action, which is what you need for a 416 cartridge. It also has a special scope mounting which allows the scope to be very low, so your stock shape doesn't differ much when you're using the iron sights or when you're using the scope. On top of which it's got this wonderful engraving by a master engraver called Spode, who did several of these rifles for Wesley Richards, but there isn't rifles of this quality, I don't think, being made anymore. Perhaps Wesley Richards do the same quality rifle, but I doubt if they're as ornate and as beautiful as this one. It really has everything going for it. And as you say, it feeds beautifully, and you've got the ultimate 416. And I hope you enjoy it, and it lasts for many, many more safaris for you. Here you are. I'll appreciate, enjoy.
Thank you, Paul. I do appreciate. It's really great rifle. Paul, next rifle is double 470 by Lang. It was made in 1922,
I think.
And can you tell a few words about this rifle and about its history and mechanism and in general? Once as a user again, I used it as the and the close proximity on the buffalo. It works absolutely perfect. Both triggers. It's great pointability, lovely balance, and once again, as Daniel mentioned, it's very manageable in recoil. You really, of course, adrenaline does its own job, but you don't feel this rifle much. You shoot it as a shotgun.
Well, this rifle, Al, is also very interesting. First of all, its history. It came out of Kenya about 15 years ago. It had been the property of a professional hunter, a Major R.E. Brown or something, who used it in the 30s and 40s. And when it came out of Kenya, it was in basically very good condition, but the stock had a major split in it. So we restocked it with, as you can see, a beautiful piece of wood, exactly in the manner of a Lang rifle. Most people think 470 was invented by Rigby. In fact, it was a Lang introduced cartridge. Rigby made many more 470s than Lang, but it was actually a Lang cartridge. It also has the best lockup of any double rifle. It has the doll's head with the screw grip. Now what that means is when you shut it, a third lock comes into there to hold it down. And these doll's head screw grips are the finest lockup on a heavy caliber rifle. They never come loose. The actions were made by W.C. Scott, who made the Rigbys, the Evans, Army and Navy. All the very best of their box locks were made by W.C. Scott and then finished by the maker. And this one, as you know, was finished by Lang. It also has a very good feature on the trigger, on the forend, which is this latch. Now, some button forends can be pressed inadvertently and the forend can come off. But with these, with the lever, once your hand's around it, it can't come off. So it is mechanically absolutely the perfect rifle for following up dangerous game and hunting generally. So you've really got here a good working rifle of very high quality. Not a lot of embellishment, but straightforward, good quality English gun making. And considering it's nearly 100 years old, I hope you use it on its 100th birthday, which is in 5 years' time. Enjoy this one as well.
Firstly, Paul, I'd just like to say thank you very, very much for putting this rifle, sorting this out and putting it together for me. I love it. It suits me perfectly. It's very manageable, very pointable, and it's come together perfectly. So I couldn't be more happy. Thank you. I'd love to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, about it, a little bit more about the history and what you think of the rifle, and anything you really wish to say about it.
Let me have a hug of it. Well, Dan, as you know, I've been working with the Italian gun making industry for the last 30 years, and I've been getting on very well with a company called Rizzini, and I put it to them about 5 years ago, would they be interested in making a double-barreled rifle in the English style of an English box lock. And it took about 5 years in development, and some of the questions they asked me were strange, and they said, why does it need a bolster? I said, this isn't a shotgun, this is a heavy caliber rifle. Why does it need a third bite? They said, you know, our actions are so strong. I said, you're underestimating the power of a 470 or a 500. So anyway, Rizzini agreed, and they brought out prototypes which we looked at and worked with. We got the barrel thickness right, the weight right, and we got a rifle that is a close facsimile to that good working English box lock at a fraction of the price it would cost to make one in England today. And we were aiming at the market exactly like you, the professional hunter who wants a very good tool for the job, but isn't in the £50,000 market. So I think what we've managed to achieve here, if you look at the thickness of the barrels and the weight and the balance, we've achieved something very close to the original English, conception. We've got room here for a spare sight. You've got the long tang trigger guard. You've got most of the features of a good English rifle at not all that cheap, but well within the parameters of what most professional hunters of your ilk can afford. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it carries on working well for you.
Thank you very much again.
Dear Paul, 55 years of gun making and active product testing in form of the safaris, stalking and hunting. Can you share with young generation of hunters and the sportsmen the essence of your experience and essence of your knowledge and what you would love to share as the part of your wisdom?
The first thing I'd like to say, Al, is that from a gunmaker's point of view, it's a marvellous experience to actually see products that you've worked on and fitted to your clients in actual African safari use. I think that unfortunately in the British gun trade, for a while, they produced guns without the background knowledge of them being used other than in India, because India was the big market and we were rather focused until the end of the Second World War on the Indian market. Now, of course, after that we got more focused on Africa, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to actually see my products, the many, many Rigby's that I made when I owned Rigby's, and guns I've imported from India and refurbished, to see them actually in the hands of clients and professional hunters has been one of the biggest satisfactions that I've had, because they're kind of a testament to what I've done for the last 55 years. And I think that also over that period, I've acquired a certain amount of knowledge as to what works well. And in double barrel rifles, for example, fit and measurement is quite important, balance and the ability of the owner of the rifle to handle the recoil. There has been a tendency by some people to use rifles that had too much recoil for them to shoot accurately. And there have been other clients that have trusted too much in lighter caliber rifles that have at some point let them down. I know one or two clients that have had very bad accidents by using a lighter caliber in certain circumstances. So I have learnt a little bit about the African scene. What I would say, Al, is that unfortunately the African hunting scene is getting smaller and more difficult to arrange than it was when I started in this business 50 years ago. As Dan would be able to tell you, 50 years ago Kenya was a wonderful hunting destination, and there was another dozen countries that no longer hunt. So the market has got more restricted on what we can sell and what we make. So we've had to centralize our thoughts on getting the guns right. And I think, you know, now the gun trade, not only English gun trade, but also the American and Italian gun trade, are beginning to focus on the correct weapons for African hunting. And so I've seen a great rise in the quality and efficiency of the guns. Also, the ammunition. The ammunition makers have really realized that what they've got to produce for the African market is a very specialist type of bullet, and they are producing very good ammo. The 470 ammunition available today is superior than what was available up until 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Admittedly, the solids made by Kynoch were always pretty good, but their soft nose were designed for cats, for India. And now some of the soft nose 470, 416 ammunition is suitable for the more dangerous game in Africa. So I think generally there's been an improvement on the firearms, improvement on the ammunition, but a rather sad tale about the areas where we can use them. They have diminished considerably since I started in the late 50s in this business.
Whistler Richards 416 worked absolutely fantastic. One shot, hard and long. Animal went for 120 yards, stone dead. What can be better? I'm so happy.
Nice old bull, taken out very cleanly, and he's going to provide a lot of meat, and he's a fantastic trophy. And
I'm so happy, son. Thank you, Danny, for
You know, all this waiting around, getting hot, I'm being bitten by mosquitoes, you know.
This is a moment when three men are happy. A gun maker, a PH, and a hunter. Because tool one built for both worked absolutely perfectly, and quarry one have chosen was perfect for the case. Old bull, lived 3/4 of his life, gave everything to the nature. And obviously it's absolutely thrilling moment for the hunter, especially for the hunter like me who shot his first elephant. And I think the story of this rifle, when I came to Paul Roberts, Uncle Paul, and I said to him, I would love to try to hunt elephants. He said, you need 416. This elephant was taken technically by one shot.
It was clean shot, clean kill, with a gun I supplied, and that's what my life's all about. It's making guns or supplying guns to people that do the job. This one's covered in beautiful engraving. That's superfluous. It's the mechanics that do the work, and in this case, it did it very well. And here's the result, a beautiful old bull elephant.
Paul, please give us a little bit of history and information on the 450 Rigby caliber, which you developed and created in 1993, and the sort of the idea and use and intended, so just general information on it.
We can definitely say that caliber was created in Africa, and it was created really for African hunting. The original idea was for a professional hunter to have a little bit more penetration and wallop than 416 Rigby. That was the original idea. And it all started when I shot a very good elephant on my last day in Nyakasanga, one of the blocks on the Zambezi Valley that used to be auctioned. And I'd put 2 body, lung, heart shots into this elephant, but it was plodding along and it was going towards the Harare-Lusaka main road, and we were banned from hunting within 400 meters of that road, and it was only half a mile away. So I had to anchor this elephant, and I shot for the ball joint to bring it down so we could catch up with it. It was walking, but it was walking about as fast as this little fat boy could run. So I took a shot, bang, and I hit it right, and it carried on, and I hit it again in the same place. And Joe Wright, my professional hunter, said, "What are you doing? Hit it in the ball joint." I said, "Well, I did." Bang, third shot, and it went down. Then we gave it the coup de grace. And when we looked at the bullets, 2 of the bullets were embedded in the ball joint, but they hadn't smashed it. The third one had. So Joe and I said, you know, this 416 Rigby, great caliber, but it needs a little bit more clout. And so when we got back to England, I got in touch with a guy called David Little, who had Kynamco, and Wolfgang Romme, who was a German rifle manufacturer. And between the 3 of us, we redesigned the 416 to accommodate the classic Rigby 450 480 grain bullet. 450 was a very famous Rigby caliber. He introduced the first nitro double rifle in 450. So we upped the bullet weight to 480 and the diameter, of course, and we did some tests, and we were getting about 23.75. We were trying to replicate the Rigby velocity, and it was a little bit pokey, so we detuned it to about 23.25, just over 2,300 feet per second, quite manageable. And Kynamco loaded the ammunition, and it was picked up by several other manufacturers. Norma make it now. And after I sold the Rigby company, I didn't think that the 450 would prosper. And for a while, the American owners of Rigby's didn't do anything with it. But when Mauser Blaser took over, bought the Rigby company, they really went to town. And now they sell about 1 450 for every 2 or 3 416s. And it's very popular in South Africa, and it's got a good reputation with guys like you that need good stopping power, especially on a wounded animal, whether it's a buffalo or an elephant. And we did penetration tests. It's about 20% more than 416, and
Okay. Wow.
it penetrates well, and it just gives the PH that extra little bit of knockdown power when he needs it. And that's the whole story, really. It's as simple as that. But designed, thought about in Africa, and the first ones ever shot I tested in Botswana actually, and they worked very well, so we were quite happy with it.
some people, I know there's the 450-400, there's the 450 Nitro Express 3 1/4. Just give us a little bit more information on the 450 range of cartridges.
Rigby worked, the old John Rigby the third, I think he was John Rigby the third, worked at Enfield developing military cartridges. He worked on the 303 development and was very involved with the latest powders, cordite and rifleite and all that sort of stuff. So he designed the first big game Nitro Express rifle. Up until then, people were using 8 bores, 10 bores rifles, or 5.77 500s, which were quite powerful in black powder, but a lot of smoke and a lot of dirt. And the first ones were sold in 1896. Newman had one. He had two actually, and he said in one of his books, or his only book, he said that if he'd have had the 450 Rigby in the 1880s, 1890s, early 90s, he'd have shot twice as many elephants. Then rapidly followed some other 450 cartridges. Holland developed the 500 450, which was a 500 case neck to 450, and that became obsolete with the 450 Rigby. Not obsolete, but unsaleable in India, because the Indian and African governments didn't want people getting hold of 450 bullets.
Yeah, that led to the creation of the 470.
Exactly.
When I was originally thinking about a big game rifle, and I always wanted a double. I think there's a romance with it, there is a practicality with it. But one of the ones I was looking at was the 450 400 or 450 Nitro Express. Yes. I think it's a pretty good round, and of course the 470 and the 500.
I think the great advantage of the 450 400s, of course they haven't quite got the stopping power of a 470, but they can be built lighter. They have big cases and fairly low pressure, and if you're doing a lot of carrying, they have the advantage of being a pound or pound and a half lighter with no appreciable increase in recoil. And I had a 450 400 Jeffrey, which I used on one safari, and I must say it was a 9-pound rifle, and between 9 pounds and 10.5, it feels like there's half a ton difference, you know. And they were very nice guns, and they've become very popular now.
Yeah, I see Norma's also loading bullets for them as well.
Yes, and Hornady make the Jeffrey round, and Kynamco make the 3 1/4, and I expect other companies are picking them up as well.
And very good penetration.
Yes,
I think.
With the modern bullets, they work very well. Yeah.
So what do you think about the modern 416 500 cartridge?
Very interesting, to be honest, Dan. I haven't used it in the field, but it was designed by a good friend of mine and a very, very good ammunition designer, Wolfgang Romy, a German, and we discussed this quite a bit. It's actually really based on the 470 case, but it's called 500 416 because 470 and 500 base is the same. And Wolfgang Romy designed it to give a bit more horsepower to the 450 400s that were around. And all I can say is that the reports I've had from it have always been very good.
I just bought a 375 recently. I just got the license as a light recoil caliber, which is it's about, can you handle it? First of all, I wouldn't have minded going higher, but I thought as a client rifle, having a 375 on my
excellent choice. Yes.
So I was just wondering. I know typically most people for big game, and it's actually the standard in Namibia and most places, is a minimum caliber of 375 and a minimum grain of 300. I'm just curious if you know much about the Norma Woodley load, which is actually a 350 grain in 375.
I've never had experience with that 350 grain, but I think you've got to decide if the client is going after buffalo or elephant, almost certainly that will give better penetration than the 300 grain.
Okay.
If, however, you're looking at lion or plains game or leopard, then there's no point in having the extra penetration. What you need is the trajectory. So I think you've got to balance the two. For plains game, an American friend of mine who is in the Hall of Fame in the Safari Club and we did 9 or 10 safaris together. In the old days, especially in Kenya, he used to have 3 or 4 270 grain bullets in his jacket and his 375 loaded with 300 grain. And if he had to take a long 200-yard shot, he used to take one of the 270s, which he said, and I've seen it on target, shot about 3 inches higher in his rifle, so it made it very flexible.
We had this conversation about calibers and what to choose, and a very valid point is the bullets that you can readily find available, which is why the 470 is such a great cartridge to have. That's also the reason I went for a 375, but also in Africa it's also not just about, I've got all sorts of things I would love to have, but it's about what you have available in your country.
Not only in Africa, but worldwide as well. It's not the only situation. You have situations worldwide where 375 and perhaps 470 are more standardly available. But the reason why I tried to influence you to buy your double rifle in 470 was because the Rizzini company that I've worked with for 20 years, we decided to design a 470. A double rifle, and we based the whole design around building a 470. They then went on to build the rifle in 500 and 375. But the measurements I gave them and the design of the bolsters and the distance between the barrels were all based on a 470 box lock English rifle.
I would love my day-to-day profession to be a professional hunter, but I'm not as fortunate. I'm an economist. That's why I think about hunting as about equation. And in that equation, for me, there are 3 main parameters. It's gun maker, it's a pH, and it's a hunter. What we're gonna do today, my dear friends, we're gonna take 2 elements of this equation, pH and the gun maker, and we'll let them talk about aspects of guns and calibers used in African safaris, evolution of it, and we will try to be absolutely practical and talk about things which really concern us, not to be over technical, but realistic. Thank you very much.
Tell me a little of what you think of the 577 and also the 600 Nitro Express.
I know, Dan, that you were contemplating at one time buying a 577, and from a pH point of view, it has its uses, especially if you're hunting elephants in equatorial forest situation, and the pH can handle it. The 577 is the biggest gun that can be handled comfortably. I've hunted with a 577 and a 600, and I find with the 577 it is the heaviest caliber gun that I've ever felt that I could handle. And I shot elephant and buffalo with 577. However, I was rather disappointed from a hunter's point of view, not as a stopping rifle, but as a hunting point of view. No difference in performance from a 470 that was noticeable. However, from a professional hunter's point of view, a going away elephant, a going away buffalo, that's where the 577 really comes into its own. The reason they were developed in the original days is, of course, professional elephant hunters didn't have a pH backing them up, so they needed a put it down flat rifle. But Bill Judd, who I've had one of his rifles, and I've followed his history, was killed actually after he put two bullets in an elephant with his 5.77. So it's not the magic bullet by any means, but it does have what we were talking about with the 450 Rigby Magnum rimless. It does have that pH advantage. But Dan, it's a very heavy gun to carry.
Yeah.
I've carried them in my youth. Robin, in your long career of being a professional hunter, and it is a long career by any standards, what do you think of the equipment that we've got today? Do you think it is superior to what we had in the 50s and 60s? When I started hunting in the 70s, we used the traditional English-made rifles and ammunition, and today we have a whole variety of different types of bullets. What's your opinion about the equipment we've got today for hunting, especially focused on Africa?
You know, when I grew up hunting, one of the biggest problems we had was getting available ammunition for heavy rifles. The Kynoch factory, something went wrong and they couldn't produce ammo. The Americans came out with a 458 to compensate for that, but I stuck to using I had a 470, I stuck to using that because I felt comfortable with it. I never liked the 458 when it first came out because it lacked penetration and some of the bullets weren't formed properly, and you'd put some down the end of the barrel and they'd literally wobble around. I don't know if you experienced that, but I had it several times, and it ended up with many wounded animals, especially big animals like elephant and buffalo. That is no longer a problem. Ammunition made nowadays is made to such a high standard that one doesn't need to worry. The other big problem was when the 5.77, which is a caliber I very much admire, was a huge problem on bull elephants, especially on frontal brain shots, because the bullet wouldn't penetrate the whole skull. And you would end up an elephant would shake his head like this and off you'd go, and you'd then have to pursue him for several hours to finish him off. So yeah, when I started my career, we had big problems with faulty ammunition. The rifles made in that era were superb, probably the best ever. Now, going through to this day, we still have very, very well-made English guns. And I can mention Holland, I can mention Wesley Richards, I can mention Rigby, I can mention Paul Roberts, I can mention a whole bunch of names. And there's a very good German company called Hartmann and Weiss. They all make superb rifles. You could never make a mistake using any of them. So yeah, I think today hunters are lucky because they have a choice of very well-made weapons, not only by Germans and British makers, but by Finns and Austrians, and you name it. So the quality is there. And the ammunition, as I said earlier, is now made to perfection.